Elena Carter believed in a kind of love that wasn't flashy or loud. It was the steady, dependable kind, the kind that stood firm through hard days, arguments, and uncertainty. It was the love built slowly, layer by layer, like the foundations of a house. She had watched her parents fight for their marriage through illness and unemployment, and had come to understand that real love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about staying. She met Jonah Pierce in the middle of the Andean highlands, both covered in dust and paint, helping rebuild a school that had been damaged in a landslide. Jonah was documenting the project for an NGO. Elena was one of the coordinators, offering mental health support to the families. Their connection was instant, yet quiet. A slow burn that began with shared meals, then long walks through mountain paths, and finally, an evening under the stars where Jonah asked, "Do you ever think you just find someone who gets it?" Back in Portland, their relationship blossomed naturally. Elena's apartment became theirs. They spent Sunday mornings tangled in bed, whispering about dreams and fears. They had rituals: Tuesday taco nights, Friday hikes, morning crosswords over coffee. Jonah loved Elena's calmness, her ability to listen without judgment. Elena loved Jonah's curiosity, the way he could capture entire emotions with a single photograph. They had boundaries. They made space for each other's independence. They discussed hard things openly: childhood trauma, financial fears, career goals. Friends often commented on how balanced they were. "You two are so emotionally mature," one couple had said. And it was true. They communicated, they respected, they grew. But the truth is, even the healthiest love can carry shadows. And some cracks go unnoticed until the light changes. It was a rainy November afternoon when Jonah received the email from National Echo magazine offering him an assignment in Istanbul. Elena was the first person he told. 6 weeks, he said, dropping the phone onto the kitchen table. They want a human interest feature on Syrian refugee artists in Turkey. Elena stirred the pot of lentil soup on the stove and turned to him, her face lit up with pride. "That's amazing, Jonah. You've wanted something like this for months." "It means I'd be gone over Christmas," he added, his voice tentative. She paused, then nodded. "We'll celebrate when you get back. Or early. It's okay. This is your dream." They talked logistics, how they'd manage the time difference, when he could call, how she'd send him care packages. They made it feel doable. It was the kind of challenge they knew how to handle. But Jonah felt the tension before he even boarded the plane. Something about the idea of leaving for so long unsettled him. It wasn't Elena. It was him, the restless pull he had always felt when life grew too comfortable. The first week in Istanbul, everything was a whirlwind. The city, rich with colors, textures, contradictions. He spent hours photographing artists in small studios, capturing fragments of displacement and hope. He emailed Elena each night, sent her pictures, voice messages. But by the second week, he was forgetting the time difference. He answered her texts with quick, distracted replies. Calls became shorter. One night he messaged, "Exhausted, long day. Talk tomorrow." Elena tried not to overthink it. She rationalized. It was a demanding assignment. Different time zone. New environment. But the silence grew heavier. One evening, she made a batch of his favorite cardamom cookies and caught herself setting aside a few for him. Then she remembered he wasn't coming home for weeks. That night, she wrote him a long email, warm, vulnerable, supportive. She told him how much she missed him, how proud she was, and how she couldn't wait to see his photos. He responded the next morning with a voice message. "You're the best thing in my life, Elena. I don't say that enough. I miss you too." But even in his voice, she sensed something. Like a tremor under calm waters. a dissonance she couldn't name. It was subtle. At first, the way he mentioned a woman named Leyla. She's helping with translation. Knows everyone. Incredible stories. Then she appeared in more of his photos. Always in the background, always laughing. Elena told herself not to be paranoid. Trust was everything. Jonah had never given her a reason to doubt him. Until he came back. He returned just after New Year's. The airport was crowded, and Elena wore his favorite scarf, the blue wool one he'd bought her in Peru. He smiled when he saw her, but it didn't reach his eyes. They hugged. He smelled of unfamiliar cologne. His skin felt cold. Back home, he gave her a Turkish coffee set, a notebook with hand-pressed pages, and a scarf embroidered with gold thread. I saw this and thought of you, he said, his tone earnest. But there was a detachment in him she couldn't touch. That night, while Jonah slept beside her, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love could shift in silence. The next Saturday, Jonah was at a gallery meeting and Elena sat at his desk to transfer some files. He had asked her to help organize the photos for a grant proposal. She opened the camera folder on his laptop, clicking through the Istanbul shots. Her fingers paused on a thumbnail. She double-clicked it. It was a candid shot, captured through a cafe window. Jonah and Leyla sat across from each other, her fingers touching his wrist, both of them laughing. But it wasn't the laughter that made Elena's heart constrict. It was the way Jonah was looking at Leyla, open, admiring, vulnerable. He had never looked at Elena that way. Not in photos. Maybe not in life. The sound of her own breath startled her. She closed the laptop, her hands trembling. She sat for a long time, trying to tell herself it meant nothing. People laugh. People connect. But her gut knew better. She had spent years helping others name their truths. And now hers sat like a stone in her stomach. When Jonah returned, she asked. He didn't deny knowing Leyla. She helped with translations. Took me to places I never would have found alone. We talked. She's smart. Elena looked him in the eyes. Did anything happen between you two? He hesitated. No, nothing happened. It was just a connection. I didn't act on it. She wanted to believe him. So she did. But the image was burned into her memory, and a seed of doubt had been planted. The weeks that followed were a strange dance between closeness and withdrawal. Elena didn't confront Jonah again. She didn't have proof of infidelity, only a photo, a look, a feeling, but it lived under her skin, making her more aware of every moment of distance. Jonah, for his part, tried harder. He planned date nights, brought home flowers. He suggested a weekend getaway to the coast. They drove out to Cannon Beach, ate chowder, walked along the shoreline. He took her picture at sunset. But even then, she noticed the way he looked past her sometimes. How his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. She told herself they were rebuilding. That relationships go through rough patches. And then she found the journal. It wasn't hidden, just tucked under a stack of books on his nightstand. Jonah usually kept notes on assignments, photography ideas. She flipped through it absent-mindedly, until she reached a page where her name was mentioned. Elena sees me clearly. Maybe too clearly. There are days I wish I could disappear into something less expected. Something like Leyla. With her, I felt like a version of myself I'd forgotten. Elena read the words over and over. Not a confession of cheating, but a confession of longing. The truth broke in small, sharp pieces. She didn't tell Jonah she'd read it. Instead, she carried it quietly. In her body, in her sleep, in her silence. It wasn't until spring that Jonah confessed. They had just returned from a friend's engagement party. Elena had smiled, chatted, toasted the couple. On the way home, Jonah was quiet. Back at the apartment, he sat on the edge of the bed and said, "I need to tell you something." Elena folded her arms. "Okay." He took a breath. In Istanbul, there was a night. It was late. Leyla and I had dinner. We drank too much. I kissed her. She didn't speak. She felt the words settle into her bones. "I stopped it," he said. I came back to the hotel. I hated myself after. I didn't know how to tell you. "Why now?" she asked. "Because lying to you feels worse than the truth." She looked at him, the man she loved, the man she thought she knew. And she broke. Not with rage. With sorrow. "I don't know what to do with this," she said. "I'll do whatever it takes," Jonah said. "Therapy. Time. Anything. I want us." But she didn't answer. She went to the couch. She cried herself to sleep. They began couples therapy. It was awkward. Painful. Raw. Jonah spoke about fear. About feeling invisible. About guilt. Elena spoke about betrayal. About dignity. About love and its cost. Sometimes, after sessions, they'd walk silently around the block. Other times, they fought. Shouted. Then held each other in the dark. Progress was slow. Trust doesn't rebuild like a wall. It grows like a scar, visible, imperfect, healing. But it grew. One night, months later, Elena said, "I don't think I'll ever fully forget it. But I think I can forgive it." Jonah reached for her hand. "That's more than I deserve." She looked at him. "Don't make me regret it." They traveled that summer. Spain. Morocco. Then a return to Peru, where they first met. They visited the school, now fully rebuilt. Jonah took photos of the children, the village, the sky. They made new memories. They laughed again. They had hard days still, but something in them was different. Elena began writing a book, part memoir, part mental health guide. Jonah helped design the cover. They were not the same people, not the same couple, but they were something new. It was autumn again. Elena returned home one evening to find the apartment filled with photos, all their moments, printed and strung with lights. The coffee shop in Istanbul. The Andes. Cannon Beach. Even the photo from the engagement party. Jonah stood in the center, holding a small velvet box. "I failed you once," he said. "But I've learned what it means to fight for someone. Will you marry me?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. They married on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Small ceremony. Close friends. Her parents wept. Jonah's sister read a poem. Their vows weren't full of cliches. They were honest. Real. "I vow to never stop learning you," Elena said. "I vow to hold our truths even when they hurt," Jonah replied. They kissed under the gray-blue sky. Years later, Elena would teach a seminar on forgiveness. She would speak of betrayal, not as a fracture that ends love, but as a test that reveals its shape. And Jonah, gray at the temples, would photograph her from the back of the room. Proud, steady. Love, she told her students, is not the absence of pain. It is the courage to stay, to speak, to rebuild. The truth doesn't ruin love. It defines it.